The citizens of Fieldkirk, Austria, didn't know what to do. Napoleon's massive army was preparing to attack. Soldiers had been spotted up on the heights above the little town, which was situated right on the Austrian border. A council of citizens was hastily summoned to decide whether they should try to defend themselves or display the white flag of surrender. It happened to be Easter Sunday, and the people had gathered in the local church. The pastor rose and said, "Friends, we have been counting on our strength, and apparently that has failed. As this is the day of the Lord's resurrection, let's just ring the bells, have our services as usual, and leave this whole matter in his hands. We know only our weakness. Let's discover the power of God to defend us." The council accepted his plan, and the church bells rang out. The enemy, hearing the sudden peals of the church bells, concluded that the Austrian army must have arrived during the night to help defend the town. And before the worship services ended, the enemy broke camp and left. A simple story from history that reminds us that when things seem impossible, God will find a way to turn defeat into victory. Welcome to Scripture Pursuit. I'm Glenn Russell, your host. We're so glad you've joined us for our Bible discussion today as we conclude our series about the book of Deuteronomy. Now, we're so glad to welcome our guest, a frequent contributor, Donald Bedney. Welcome. Glad to have you with us, sir.
Thank you, Glenn. Wonderful, as always, to be with you.
And on this Christmas Sabbath, last time you were with us, you had one wonderful wife and some adult children. Is that still the same picture?
It's still true, and those adult children have given us 2 grandchildren, so really excited about that.
And there's a smile on your face when you say that, Donald.
I can't help it.
That's great. Donald, would you lead us in prayer that as we open God's word, he'll first of all, through his spirit, open our minds?
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Let's pray. Father in heaven, we are thankful that we can study your word. We are particularly delighted that we've been able to spend time in the book of Deuteronomy. And now as we close this book and this study, we ask for the Holy Spirit to be with us. And may we be inspired by this final study about Moses and his life. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So Donald, just to recap a little bit, we're here in the book of Deuteronomy, just at the end. Moses has preached these sermons. He's given a second reading or giving of the words, the law, the instruction of God. And now he's wrapping it up, and we're reminded of an incident that took place, that pivotal incident in Moses' life back in Numbers chapter 20. So why don't we go there, and I'll read a little bit and then let you draw some ideas out of it that strike you. Numbers chapter 20, starting with verse 1. And the people of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the first month. And the people stayed at Kadesh, and Miriam died there and was buried there. Now there's no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and said, "Would that we had died when our brethren died before the Lord. Why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, that we should die here, both we and our cattle? And why have you made us come up out of Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It is no place for grain or figs or vines or pomegranates, and there is no water for us to drink." Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly of the Lord to the tent of the meeting and fell on their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. And the Lord said to Moses, "Take the rod, assemble the congregation, you and Aaron your brother, and tell the rock before your eyes to yield its water, so you shall bring water out of the rock for them." So Moses goes, and verse 10. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, "Hear now, you rebels, shall we bring forth water for you out of this rock?" And Moses lifted up his hand and struck the rock with his rod twice, and water came forth abundantly, and the congregation drank and their cattle. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the people of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them."
Mm, 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 mm.
Now, Donald, I don't know about you, but I've made some mistakes. Was this the worst one Moses had ever made? He'd made a few.
Well, it's interesting that you should ask that because I mean, because from a human standpoint, we think back on Moses' life, and the first public sin that he committed was a murder,
Hmm.
and you're like, well, that seems pretty bad. And this one, it doesn't seem to be quite as bad, and yet, as you said, it was considered so bad that God said, because of this, you're not going to go to the land of Canaan.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I guess if we would kind of talk about what the nature of this sin was, I think the thing that stands out to me is one, and that in verse 12, because you did not believe me
Hmm.
and hallow me. Here we have a situation where God is asking him, both Moses and Aaron, to obey his word, do exactly what I say, and this is going to happen. But for whatever, well, I almost said for whatever reason, but Moses has really gotten to the point, and I think some of us as human beings get this point, where he's like, I am so sick and tired of hearing this same thing. It's like a broken record.
Yeah.
The people are complaining, and this is actually the second generation that's complaining. And he's like, this is, I'm fed up. And
Yeah.
so he flies off the handle, he strikes the rock instead of speaking to it. But the other thing that he does is he says, must we bring water for you out of this rock? And
Okay.
instead, yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
just if we could pause right there, because you've hit like 3 or 4 main points here.
Okay. All right.
This point where he's frustrated, he's exasperated. I mean,
Mm.
look, if he had said, "Here now, you rebels," and just stopped right there, it would probably have been the angels in heaven would have been, yeah, that's right.
We agree.
They were rebellious. They were frustrating. But it's interesting. I don't want to put too much into this, but I wonder what were the factors that contributed to his failure this time, when other times he had actually gone before God when God was frustrated with them, and he had said, "Hey, don't wipe them out unless you wipe me out as well."
Yes.
But there's
Yes.
something in verse 2 in verse 1 that struck me. And Donald, I don't want to make too much of this,
Okay.
but it's interesting to me to note that it says, "And Miriam died there."
Ah.
Is it possible? Is it
Mm.
possible that, not to excuse, but to understand a little bit? Here's a leader. When you're a leader, you turn to a certain circle of people who confide and support, and you can be yourself around and trust them. He's lost his sister. That sister, by the way, who first comes on the scene near the waters of the River Nile, when he's in a basket and so forth. The sister who praised at the crossing of the Red Sea,
Yes.
the sister who also got leprosy for her jealousy. So
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag, but I just wonder if at a time of grieving,
Mhm.
he may have been a little more emotionally vulnerable, a
Yeah.
little more less leaning on the Lord. It would have been great if he had taken that to God, but it seems like he and Aaron kind of depended on themselves a bit, which you're pointing out there.
Yeah.
Must we
Yeah.
bring forth water from the rock?
Yeah. That's a great point I think you just made, Glenn. And we are, as human beings, we are vulnerable to the vicissitudes of life, the things that happen. We just got a call this morning. My wife's cousin, who was in his early 50s, was found dead in his home. And these things happen, but they're devastating to a family and to individuals. And so, I think there may be something to what you just said, that Moses was already reeling, from the death of his sister, and he knew that he and his family had been targets for years, and now the people are going to talk about him and his brother and blame them for the situation. Oh, he's ready to go off. He's just really upset.
Now, when God instructed them to speak to the rock, in the past there had been a striking of the rock on a
Yes.
previous occasion, but this
True.
time it's speak to the rock.
Mhm, mhm.
He doesn't obey. He shouts. I'm guessing he didn't say this in a quiet tone. I think he's shouting at them, and he strikes the rock in anger twice.
Yeah, yeah.
What's wrong with that? Come on, do we have to be so rigid, so legalistic in our obedience?
Well, in this case, God, I think, was attempting to speak or to present to Israel an object lesson.
Hmm.
Um, you know, he wanted Moses to speak to the rock, which would demonstrate the power of his word,
Hmm.
as opposed to him striking it. You can strike something and make water come out. But he wanted the purity of his voice and the power of his word to have an impact on the people, and also to let them know, hey, I'm the one who does this. I've been the one
Exactly.
who brought you this far. And
Yeah.
Moses' action of just flew in the face of God's
Hmm.
of God's plan.
So in the past, striking the rock kind of pointed towards the cross and Jesus being struck on the cross.
That's
Now
right.
he is told to speak to the rock. Uh,
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, people get used to miracles, and they had had many miracles. And this
Hmm.
would have been a little different now. This time, speak to it. So there's no magic formula. It's not
That's
the
right.
stick you used, or it's not how you hit the rock. And
That's
people who are into these supernatural things, they think it's the abracadabra, but in fact, it's not a formula. It's God who will be the one.
that's right.
And then that
And
point
it's,
about
and it's obedience to God's word.
obedience to God. Yeah, we bring forth water for you. Uh,
Mhm.
that event that should have pointed the people to God as the
Mhm.
source, he distracts them by
Mhm.
saying, is this something we've got to do? By the way,
Yeah.
have you thought about those words? I mean, Donald, it seems like as soon as he would have said them, he might have thought, did I really say that? I mean, do I think I have some right, some power? But
Mhm.
sometimes in ministry, when we're in ministry and we see God working, there may be a temptation to draw to ourselves some, do I need to do this for you? You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
in fact, it was God who worked in us and through us and in spite of us many times.
Sure. Sure. Those miraculous things that happen, and sometimes, you know, as a partial result of our
Hmm.
actions, we may be tempted to take credit for it.
Yeah, yeah. And that takes the eyes off God. You
Absolutely.
know, it's interesting when David, that famous story of him asking for the water from the well of Bethlehem. And then
Yes.
when it comes, he's like, I'm not worthy of this. And he pours it on the ground as a drink offering.
Yes.
Moses was needed to do something like that at this case. But instead,
Sure.
you know, do we need to do this? Now,
Mm.
again, God says in verse 12, because you did not believe in me to sanctify me in the eyes of the people. His lack of faith put
Hmm.
himself as in the spotlight rather than God.
Yes.
They were to lift up, as Jesus said, if I be lifted up, I'll draw them into me.
Yes.
And here
Yes.
it's Moses who's getting lifted up, and Aaron.
Right. That's right. And even Jesus, when he taught the disciples how to pray, and obviously it's a prayer that we still pray today, he said, say to the Father, hallowed be thy
Mm,
name.
mm,
You are the one who is
yeah.
who is to be venerated. You are the one who is to be praised. Not humans, not man, but you.
Apparently, God takes it quite seriously if we point people away from him. And that's quite a warning for us, isn't it? If
It
we
is.
take credit to ourselves,
Mhm.
maybe that's the first commandment. We become an idol in place of God. There should be no other gods.
Mhm.
I do have to wonder, though, what do you think it means, the fact that God sent water anyway? I mean, he could have just said,
Yeah.
excuse me, Moses, you didn't get it right.
Right.
Now,
Right.
there's
Right.
nothing coming out. You're going to have to speak to it.
Right.
But God allows the water to come. What does that say about his mercy and grace, even with the failure?
Yeah, that's incredible. And when you think about it, it kind of reminds me of the fact that God often blesses us, blesses our families, blesses churches, even blesses nations, even though they're going in the wrong direction, simply because he is so good. Now, he doesn't do it forever. There is judgment, but he does bless sometimes in spite of, well, many times in spite of us.
I know there's been plenty of sermons and plenty of other times when I haven't been as close to the Lord as should be, but he's worked anyway. And it's so humbling. It's so humbling to realize, whew, God, you did something there in spite of me. You kind of pushed me to the side, you know. But the facts are that people were still thirsty and they needed water, and God mercifully supplied their need.
It's amazing.
Yeah, somehow influence seems to be a big factor here. God says the way you use your life, the influence you have on other people is pretty important.
It's crucial. It's very important. And Moses, remember, has been on this journey for 40 plus years, and he has been that example in so many different ways. As you said, he's interceded for the people. He's humbled himself, and now he comes to the very borders of Canaan. Messes up. It's a scary thought.
Yeah. I'd like to jump over to Deuteronomy 32 now. I want to read just a short section there at the end of chapter 32. This is moving ahead in time. Now Moses is with the people of Israel. They're at the edge of the promised land, and God speaks to him in Deuteronomy 32, verses 48 through 52. And the Lord said to Moses that very day, ascend this mountain to this mountain of Abraham, Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, opposite Jericho, and view the land of Canaan, which I give to the people of Israel for a possession, and die on that mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people as Aaron your brother died in Mount Hor, and was gathered to his people. Because you broke faith with me in the midst of the people of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh, in the wilderness of Zin, because you did not revere me as holy in the midst of the people of Israel. For you shall see the land before you, but you shall not go there into the land which I give to the people of Israel. Donald, that had to be I can't describe the disappointment. Massive.
Moses' entire life, and we talked a little bit about his family, his resources, his time, his energy, everything. Hebrews says he turned his back on the possibility of the throne of Egypt to suffer the affliction with the people of God rather than enjoy the pleasures of sin for a season. He has given it all up, and now again on the borders of Canaan, ready to grasp the very thing that he has longed for his entire life, and it's snatched away. And God says, but I'm going to let you take a peek at it. Is God teasing him? I'm going to let you see it, but you're not going to get it.
It almost seems unfair if we don't know the rest of the story. So let's go over to Deuteronomy 34. And it says, and Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, which, by the way, is still there in Jordan. It's a wonderful place to go. I've been there several times, which is opposite Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land, Gilead as far as Dan, all of Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the Negev and the plain, the valley of Jericho and the city of the palms as far as Zoar. And the Lord said to him, this is the land which I swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. I will give it to your descendants. I have let you see it with your eyes, but you shall not go over there. So he says it again. He repeats it. Think of the sorrow, Don, in Moses's heart, what he's longed for all of his life, as if God said to you and I, you know what? I'm not going to let you go to heaven. Oh, talk about devastation.
Right, we'll let you see it.
Oh, no.
Or tease you with a vision or a glimpse, but not going in.
But apparently Moses accepts, because there's no description of an argument here. There's no rebuff. I mean, Moses takes the medicine that he knows he deserves.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's interesting to see. And by the way, we have to ask the question, who wrote this down? It
Yeah.
wasn't Moses.
Right.
So
Right.
it's
We're
added in. So in
right.
verse 5, Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in the land, in the valley of the land of Moab, opposite Beth Peor. But no one knows the place of his burial to this day. Now,
Hmm.
there's an interesting statement in verse 7, Deuteronomy 34. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural force abated.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Donald, it almost seems, I don't want to push this too far, but it almost seems as if he doesn't die of natural causes.
Hmm. Right. Because he's still vibrant. He still has energy, still has
Mhm.
his eyesight. I mean, and he's 120.
Yeah.
Yeah, it begs the question, how did he die? I mean, good point.
The text here points to kind of a panoramic view, doesn't it? He
Hmm.
looks over. And, I know today it's not quite the same because we have more air pollution and all the rest. But I've been there and you can't see all the way to Jerusalem and you can't see all the way to the Mediterranean Sea and you can't see the north and to the south. There seems to be a hint here of a supernatural vision,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
that
Yeah,
Moses
I
is
would.
taken into vision in which he sees not only the geography of the land, but the history of his people. And in the book Patriarchs and Prophets is a beautiful description that he is taken down through the channels of time, through the people of Israel till the monarchy, till King David, till the exile, to the coming of Jesus, to
Mm,
the destruction of the temple in the city of Jerusalem again, and the scattering, and then the gospel to the whole world. And eventually he sees even the second coming.
wow.
It's a beautiful, you can think of that being a very peaceful culmination of his
Sure.
life. He
Sure.
doesn't die
Mhm.
wrestling with God.
Mhm. Right. And doesn't die without hope for his people.
Yeah.
Because Moses was what had a love for his people that couldn't be matched. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
I can't even. And I love my family. Don't get me wrong, and I love my people. But I'm telling you, some of the things that he stood up
Mm.
and dealt with, and still love, as they
Yeah.
say, love those knuckleheads. It
Yeah.
it's amazing. Well
Now,
loved.
it's interesting that, in some of the Jewish sources, they say Moses died with the kiss of God as God held him in his arms and then buried him. It's a metaphoric, figurative kind of way of describing it,
Sure,
but it's
sure,
an interesting idea.
sure.
We are thankful for the New Testament. We'd better move there quickly because, at the face of it, this would look like a very unjust situation.
Yes,
But Jude, verse 9,
that's right.
says that Michael, or Jesus, contended with the devil over the body of Jesus.
Right,
So at some point, Jesus comes to take Moses to be to heaven with them. And the devil says, no way. He's mine.
right,
I sinned and he sinned. So how are you going to take him?
right,
And they have
right.
a contention there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Jesus is victorious. And Jesus says, yes, but he was faithful. He repented and you never did. And
Mm,
Moses is taken to heaven. And then remind us about Moses' encounter with Jesus in Matthew 17.
right. Matthew 17, and it's recorded in the other gospels as well. But Matthew 17, beginning with verse 1, it says, "Now after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and John, and his brother, and led them to a high mountain by themselves, and he was transfigured before them. And he was transfigured before them. His face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as the light." Verse 3, "And behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to them, talking with
Hmm.
him."
Hmm.
So these two patriarchs show up. Moses one, the resurrected one,
Hmm.
and Elijah, one who, as we know, the Bible records his going to heaven in a chariot, and they're down talking to Christ. Um, I'd like to be in on that conversation.
Imagine the first one resurrected, Moses. Up until then, everyone who died stayed dead.
That's
And
right.
then the one who is translated, and they
Mhm.
come to Jesus as first fruits. What does
Yes.
this tell you? We got to wrap it up. We only got 2 minutes here.
Okay. All
Donald,
right.
what does this tell you about the mercy and justice of God coming together in the life of Moses?
Well, in the life of Moses, we have a person who, like you said, guilty as charged,
Mm,
sinner. Lucifer was right. He owed his life. Um, he was supposed to die, and yet because of God's love and because ultimately because of Christ's sacrifice on the cross,
mm.
Moses and we too have hope of the resurrection.
So it seemed unfair at the end of his life, we would say.
Oh
But
yeah,
Donald, if you had a choice between earthly Canaan and heavenly, which one are you going to take?
it would be an easy choice. And for Moses to wake up later and
Mm,
to find out
mm.
he had missed earthly Canaan, God had transported him to heaven. What kind of a of joy consumed him when he walked through those pearly gates? I can't even imagine.
I think he's still singing praises.
Yes, no doubt.
And so I think it's a lesson for us that sometimes when it seems like life is harsh and God isn't fair, give it time.
Yes,
There
yeah,
may be more to the
absolutely.
story.
Hmm. Agreed. And you look at Moses and Elijah, and my guess is they were trying to say to Christ, now keep on going.
Hmm.
We don't want to have to come back. And Christ had to face burdens and certainly suffering on the cross, but he did it all for us so we could have that blessed resurrection.
Amen. Well, thank you so much to our guest today, Donald Bedney. We certainly appreciate it. And Donald, I wish your family and all of our listeners a Merry Christmas and a Christ blessed Christmas as we head into 2022. I hope it's a little better than 2021.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Glenn.
Thank you so much
God
for
bless.
being with us. We invite you to join us again next time next year. But until then, today and every day, let's continue to pursue the God of the Scriptures.